Monday, December 13th, 2021 to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Radek. Director Radek, I didn't hear you.
Here.
Thank you. Director Lohman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Slater Carter.
Counted 4.
Chair Dye.
Here.
Good.
You introduce the others on this call?
Yes, we have Tim Costello.
Here.
We have George Evans, a finance officer. We have Susie from the administration department.
Susie, you are getting kind of blending into the garden, which is, you looks like you have flowers in your hair.
Yes, and we have also with us TJ Hussain, a maintenance mechanic. And of course, Jeremy Youngrise, General Counsel. And this is me, Kishan Prativadi, General Manager for SAM.
All right. Before we start, could you give us an update on how the plant is doing with all this rain?
Sure, I can, but I have a couple of photos to share. I thought I could do it during my manager's report if you could hold on for some time. Would that be better?
Okay, but I'm very curious as to how we're doing. So.
Okay.
And could you talk about the, I see we have an employee anniversary to talk about?
Yes, we have our employee anniversary. That's TJ Hussain, who's been with us for 2 years, and I'll let Tim Costello talk about him.
Is that me?
Yes.
There he
Tim.
is, TJ. That's TJ right there. Whoop, whoop. Give it up for TJ, everybody. Yeah. So TJ has been with us for a couple years now, 2 years, 2 and 2. He's got a background in electrical. We thought it would be nice to actually get someone in that had a little bit more electrical experience, because we seem to always run down that road where we need people with additional experience. So we were able to woo him into the facility, and he gets along well with everyone, and he's just chugging along, doing his thing, keeps his head down. He's been helping out with the safety program and getting some of that stuff squared away where we were a little lacking on. And yeah, he's a good dude.
All right. Thank you, TJ. We're glad to have you aboard.
Right on. Thanks, boss man. Appreciate it. I feel so loved, Rod. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ.
Anything further there? Okay,
That's
moving
it.
on to public comment. Do we have comment from members of the public who on items that are not on the agenda? Don't see anyone
No.
here who's.
I don't
likely to
see.
comment.
I see none. Nothing. I don't see anything.
Do you see anyone?
No, I don't see anything.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda, which is to approve minutes of November 8th, approve disbursements for November 22nd, and approve the schedule of Board of Director meetings for 2022. I think there is still an error in the November 8th, 2021 minutes. And Susie, I totally apologize, but today I didn't have a chance to get back to you. I thought I sent corrections before. Did you not receive them from me? They may have been lost in somehow.
I did correct the wording that you wanted, and then I also found the mistake in the vote, and I did correct that.
Okay, well, in the agenda packet, it still showed Director Ruddick voting aye rather than nay. Let's just make sure that.
Well, I changed it. So now I believe, because I did check it after I switched it, and it said no.
Okay, good. All right, as long as the agenda is correct. So as long as the minutes are correct. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I believe that the vote record for item 4B and 4D are still incorrect.
In the November 8th meeting?
Yes.
Okay, then let's deal with it later and bring it back at the next meeting, please.
Yeah, you could just move to table it to a date certain, which would be the next regular board meeting.
Yes.
On that, Jeremy? To table it?
Yeah, so you just need a motion.
Okay. Can we have a motion to table the minutes of November 8th?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
further discussion? We need a roll call, please.
Director Radek,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye.
Aye. All right, should we have, would you be willing to amend your motion to approve the disbursements and the scheduled board of directors meetings? Who made that motion?
I'll move to approve consent.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call? please?
Director Radek,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye.
Under regular business, review and receive the financial report for Q1 fiscal year 21-22, budget versus actual.
Yes, so this is the financial report for Q1 of this fiscal year 21-22, budget versus actual. And this was discussed with the finance committee meeting last week, and it was recommended that we bring it to the board and praise the board about the Q1. So we have with us Peter Medina from Maze Consulting, who's going to make a short presentation on the budget versus actual. And over to you, Peter, and you can share your screen.
All right, thank you. I'll begin the screen. Yes, but as Kishan said, yes, Q1 going through. Oh man, okay, here we go. Prepared the PowerPoint. We went through the report with the committee, with our team as well. Hold on, let's get it going just so I don't just over talk it. No, I said these have turned into just a really good tool for our group to really kind of come together as a group for just ourselves and then George and Kishan, and then also report to the finance committee, their additional set of eyes and brains, points out, errors that we make both silly and larger, or not necessarily like errors more so than just things that don't make sense. But I said when we look at it, it's it's easy to get lost in the trees. So this kind of gives us the opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at it and seeing how we are tracking both revenue and expenditure wise. So with that, we will get into it. Purpose, as you guys know, just to provide better transparency on a regular basis. The monthly reports that you receive in the consent agenda are helpful, but this report kind of gives more of a narrative discussion as far as why different items are either over or under budget. So more transparency, the overall purpose of what we're doing here. Okay, so this accompanies your guys' report, the quarterly budget report. The major change that you'll see is basically separating O&M and collections. In the past, we used to have collections as a line item, both revenue and expenditure in the same report. Now we've broken that out and given its own narrative and its own financial statement view of revenue and expenditures, with expenditures being broken up into further classes instead of just the line item collections expense. So that's the big change that you'll see, which really lines up better with kind of how we account for the expenses and revenues within Tyler. So as it tracks, I said revenues for both revenue and or O&M and collections are both at 25%, 26% for collections, mainly for the pass-through costs. Expenditure wise, we're going to go through more to see why. So going in, what you'll see basically is On a revenue side of things, we are tracking at 25%. The way that we account for the revenue is basically when we bill the member agencies, we count that as revenue, despite collections maybe being about a month in the future. At year end, we will capture all 12 months, and we don't have a problem no matter what the timing says. So that's the big thing that you'll see there for revenues. They're all tracking at 25%. As we go through the pieces that are under other income, that changed in Q4 or Q3, Q4 of last fiscal year. The leachate income we stopped collecting, so that will not come back for the time being, and to our understanding, it's not going to come back this fiscal year. So that $150,000 is not going to be captured during this fiscal year. Interest and dividends. This is really interest from LAIF. We didn't capture Q1. We will capture both Q1 and Q2 after the end of 12/31 for that period. Capital contributions are tracking at 25%. Okay. So now going into our expenditures, we start with treatment first. Okay. So treatment isn't the major issue you'll see here is in lab, and that has to go with the heightened BOD levels and all the additional work that has gone into figuring out the problem and fixing the problem. So the treatment part of it, I said, that's tracking at 29%. So not too far over budget. So it's been okay, but yeah, lab is tracking high right now. We are over budget by quite a bit. I'm hoping to get that problem figured out and then the expenses wrangled in. These are the major projects that are ongoing and for the current expenditures as far as why we're over budget for treatment. As I said, that one is over budget by about $154,000. I said, and these items are discussing why. Okay. Admin. Okay. So these are, this one is actually a bit over budget. The big thing is for the insurance premiums, they're paid at the beginning of the year and capture the entire fiscal year. That's the piece here. That's large. That's the 76K. And then everything else, services, and then the dues and fees. This is for the purchase of Tyler for the whole year. So a lot of these expenditures, they are paid for one time and go throughout the year. So the variance should decrease as the year moves forward. Okay, and we'll talk about that more here. All right. Okay, now we get into collections. So on your handout, you'll see that there's an additional 2 pages which discuss the collections operation. Revenue is tracking right on 25%. The expenditures are down overall. Major piece here is the equipment. We are budgeted to purchase a new truck that has not been performed as of 9/30/2021. I believe that is in the process, and we may see it before the end of the calendar year, but I think it may sneak into Q3. So what you're seeing here, revenue as expected, 25%. Like I said, these are the pass-through costs. Montera has they are higher than the other 2 agencies, but expected, not expected. It is kind of the way it goes for necessary services that are paid for. So we have these pieces now. Like I said, for the expenditures, really, like I said, they're all tracking pretty well. All of them are under budget, and I said, as expected for both admin, utilities, and then the big piece basically is the CIP or the capitalized projects or the capitalized equipment, and that's going to be the truck and the repair of trucks. Big dollars there. Just hasn't happened through Q1.
I just want to make a comment here. Peter, I think it would be better if you either showed 25% since we're 1 quarter through as a comparison, or both the full budgeted item and 25%. Because if you go back a couple slides, you know, when we look at, for example, here, perfect.
I'm sorry.
No,
Wait,
go
hold
forward.
on. Go forward. Got it.
I mean, this is, you know, we know it should be 25%, but wouldn't it be more valuable to show the actual budgeted amount for the first quarter rather than the total budgeted amount? And wouldn't that be more useful to look at?
Sure.
Okay, just a thought. Thank you. Move on.
I'd like to add, I've seen it done both ways. And I find it more useful to have it with the annual budget.
But why not both?
It could be both. We've certainly, as long as the font's big enough. But I like, personally, I like to know the total budget. And so that I know how we're tracking. It's just, it works for my mind. If you want both, I have no objection.
It'd just be easier to compare the actual to the, you know.
Well, so the PowerPoint being one thing, so, and you guys have probably seen me enough by now that the PowerPoint is not my strong point. The handout is really what I go to, and as I'm talking, I'm looking at my handout. Like I said, that one gives both the year-to-date, the quarter, as well as how we're tracking by the quarter, and then with the entire fiscal year overall. So I hear what you're saying. Chair Dye, I do. And
Making too big of a deal of it. It was just a comment. Don't worry about it.
Okay, no, I get you. And yeah, I mean, we will, see, we can discuss it more. And yeah, we've been, as you've seen already, we've given a number of different views for this. So, to continue to develop that, not a problem. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Okay. Really, I clicked through to the very end, and thank you. This is my favorite slide.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, let's go ahead and stop the share. Yeah, like I said, we're presenting Q1, and we're gonna blink, and it's gonna be 2 weeks, and we're gonna be through Q2. And so, ideally, we would like to get this report to you guys by February, basically the month after, because it goes through committee, and there are always a number of interesting points that are brought up. But like I said, it's turned into a valuable tool for our team to take that step back, because it said, if we don't, you really do get caught up in the weeds, and you just start seeing on a transaction by transaction basis. So this is helpful. So yes, I said, these will continue to come your way.
Any questions from members of the board or public? Any comments?
No, I appreciate this, and I would suggest to the public not to rely on the quick PowerPoint, which is a simple overview, and to go online to the staff report where you can get a fair amount of detail. The Finance Committee has been working on this for a while with Keishan and George and Peter, and I think we're making great improvements. And I think for people to understand what the budget is and where we are, I think this is a good thing.
Right. And to that point, the monthly consent agenda has very detailed reports. At some point, we actually scaled back and had I think we have a better summary level report for the group. But I said, those identify all accounts. And so I said, it's pretty clear. As far as we provide a lot of information. And I said, if any questions ever do come up, please, by all means, please ask. And it's good practice for us all to, get into the detail, as well as come back and say, okay, well, what's the impact at a budget level, as well as a year-by-year comparison. So it's it's a good process.
Thank you, George and Peter and everyone involved for these reports. Appreciate it. Do we need a vote to receive this or just move on?
You can do a vote to receive and file.
Okay. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please?
So
So
moved.
moved. Yeah, go for it, Deborah. I'll second.
Okay, have a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Radek,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair aye. Thank you, Peter.
Moving on to item 4B, discuss proposed ordinance number 21-01, proposing changes to the authority's non-domestic wastewater source control program and setting a special meeting for December 20th, 21 to consider approving ordinance 21-01. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes. Yeah, the non-domestic waste source control program is not very new to this audience, but for those who have not been at the meeting for quite some time, we've been discussing this in literally every meeting, and it's been going on. But today we brought it as an ordinance, which we are bringing it to the meeting, and giving you a background. The NDWSCP, which is the non-domestic wastewater source control program, was actually adopted way back in 1991. And then later got revised in 2019. And recently, on November 22nd, the board decided that we would need to follow, they approved the guidelines, which was proposed by Half Moon Bay, wherein member agencies play a larger role in the non-domestic waste source control program. And therefore, this necessitated the existing ordinance to be changed. And that's why this draft ordinance has been brought to this forum, so that we can get feedback from the board. And this ordinance has already been discussed at the member agency managers level, and they in turn have got their comments from their respective councils and have forwarded their comments. Although the comments have not been incorporated in this, we thought we would get the comments from the board and get feedback from the board, and then carry out all those changes and bring it back to the board at a later date for adoption. So Jeremy, our general counsel, and me have put together a PowerPoint, and we'll walk you through that and give you details about the ordinance, and we'll be here to answer any questions. So if I may share my screen, please. Okay, before I get to the PowerPoint, just wanted to give you a heads up of what's happening at the plant. We all know that this program is extremely important for us to make sure that the process is properly controlled coming from outside. But just to give you a heads up, this is the Influent COD, which has been going on from, just to give you a glimpse of it, from October 1st until the 7th of December. You see that the COD levels are pretty high. They are increasing every day. And it's a big challenge to the plant to make sure that we are within the permit requirements. And believe me, we are spending almost about $15,000 per month adding coagulants, polymers, and all sorts of things to make sure that the process is within the permitted requirements. So these are the numbers, and you see that as early as 12/6, we've been having 12/14, we've been having high numbers going to almost 1,300, which is pretty high by all standards. We've been having CODs pretty much in the level of about 800, 700 for quite some time, but we've been seeing this surge for a couple of months going beyond 1,000, which affects our process.
And what is the number you are looking for?
Typically, it will be 800 or so. 800 would be a decent number. And this is actually, that was a COD, but if you see, this is the BOD. It directly relates to that. The BOD is actually 0.4 times the COD. So typically the BOD, we are very comfortable with somewhere like 300, 350. But you see, we have touched close to 500 also in the past, going beyond 500. These are just the Influent COD and BODs that I wanted to just project. And that is why, I don't need to emphasize the importance. I know all of you do understand the importance for the NDWSAP program, and it's best that we implement it in, at all the establishments as quickly as possible wherever needed. So that is the importance that I'd like to stress. And I'm sure that the SAM directors will take it back to the member agencies and stress the need for implementing it quickly in their respective region.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Where exactly do you measure the Influent COD and BOD and so forth? Is it, where is it in the plant? Where is it in terms of the overall system?
Well, it is in the Influent. We have a sampler there. I think specific, I don't know how I can give you that location. It is before it gets processed any further.
So
Even
it's
before,
everything that comes into the plant.
correct.
It's mixed together at that point, and then you test that.
Yes, before it gets into the headworks, and then after the headworks, it gets into the primary. So we have a separate thing called the primary Influent COD. So this is different from the primary Influent COD. This is just the Influent COD before it gets processed.
What's the primary Influent COD?
What's the level you mean?
No. What's the difference? You said it was different?
Oh, the difference is a couple of levels. Just to give you an example, if the Influent COD is about 1200, the primary Influent COD typically will be 600 or 500 or 600. And that's where the process actually starts. Does it make sense?
One's earlier than the other so what happens between this first COD and the primary Influent COD?
Well,
I'm just trying to understand this.
Yeah, it gets separated out except for the organics part of it, which move forward to get processed.
Okay.
I don't know if I made it clear. Tim, would you like to elaborate a little more further on that?
How about if Barbara wants to get into it depth, she just comes to the plant and we can walk her through it instead of wasting everyone's time here.
Well, I don't know that we're wasting everyone's time. I'm curious, and I think, okay, if I'm coming to the plant tomorrow, so you can show me. But I think I'm just trying to understand where you do the testing, and I assumed it was with everything that was coming in from everywhere.
Yeah, that's where it is. That's where it is, Chedai. It is the Influent COD is sampled at the place where everything gets collected. All the inputs coming into the plant is at one place. So that's where it's tested. And after that, it goes into the headworks. And from the headworks, it goes to the primary. So at different levels, we have the COD, which can be measured. So we have the Influent COD, we have the primary COD, we have the secondary COD. So these are three different levels where we check the COD. Okay, does that make sense?
Thank you. I don't want to waste anyone's time. I'm sorry.
No problem. We're just telling you that the gist of it is it gets separated a little bit in the first stage, and then the organics are then shifted on, and then it's further on gets processed.
Okay.
Okay.
Go on. Sorry I bothered you.
No. Okay. So we go on to the ordinance part of it. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this is a presentation put together by me and Jeremy. So feel free to pitch in. Jeremy is here to answer any questions, and then we can go from there. So these are the proposed significant changes in the ordinance as per the board direction of November 22nd. As indicated earlier, these are based on the guidelines which was approved in the November 22nd meeting, and the guidelines were proposed by Half Moon Bay and was discussed in the managers meeting where all the three managers agreed to it, and we brought it to the board and the board approved it. So based on that, the ordinance has been drafted. The changes to the earlier approved ordinance is brought also and is attached in your packet and detailed clearly as to what are the changes. So the implementation of the program is basically it lies with the district, with the SAM and member agencies where the responsibilities are clearly clarified. SAM still retains the overall oversight to protect the plant and ability to take over the program, just in case a member agency fails to properly implement the program. So that responsibility is still there, and that authority is still there with SAM. There's no change in that. The member agencies retain the ability to take on the primary permitting and enforcement role as an agent of SAM, because that is what was required by member agencies, that they wanted to be the interface with their ratepayers. And that's why this change has been made. So a new program will require incorporation into the member agency's sewer use ordinances. So typically what happens is this ordinance, once it's approved by the SAM board, then it is sent out to the member agencies and they adopt it into their sewer use ordinances. So a major change which has taken place from the 2019 ordinance is that the industrial discharger definition has been added, which was actually existing in the 1994 ordinance, which was released earlier. But for some reason, when it got adopted in 2019, the definition of industrial discharger was deleted. So we felt that this is required, and therefore we added this in this proposed ordinance. So what's the definition of the industrial discharger? Is one who discharges one or more of the following: where the flow is more than 1,000 gallons per day, where the flow or pollutant loading is greater than 5% of the design capacity of the plant. The discharges that contain any toxic pollutants, and the discharges that produce significant impact either individually or in combination with other discharges on the sewer system, and those which are subjected to state or federal treatment standards or discharges. So this is the definition of the industrial discharger. To summarize the changes in the ordinances, as indicated earlier, the member agencies take a greater role in identification of the non-domestic discharges. Member agencies, after consultation with SAM manager, have the authority to regulate, permit, and take action against non-domestic discharges. If member agency is not adequately implementing this ordinance, SAM manager can rescind the delegation of permitting and enforcement to the member agencies. And then the member agencies can contract with SAM to perform permitting and other regulatory implementation of the program. I see that Greg had raised a hand. Greg, if you would like to pose a question, we can answer it right now, or if you want to wait till the end, we can do that. Either way.
I think you should wait till the end.
Okay.
I just wanted to get in line.
Perfect. Thank you. So SAM manager and consultants, in consultation with the pertinent member agency, would require best management practices as an alternate to numeric permit limits in certain establishments. Wherever we think that numeric permit limits are not required to be enforced, then we can go with DMPs. Now, all non-domestic discharges require issuance of the permits or implementation of best management practices. The application for the permit shall be in a form as required by the SAM manager and submitted to the manager or member agencies. So the SAM manager and member agency will jointly decide whether a permit should be issued or not. So this will jointly agree on the contents of the permit, and the member agency will then have the authority to issue, implement, and enforce the permit as agent for SAM. Because the member agency enforces this as an agent for SAM, the present JPA does not require any change. So the SAM manager retains the right to deny any permit application if it is determined that the permit will not adequately protect the SAM system. Whenever any permits are issued, renewed, or modified, SAM needs to be notified of it. The fee structure, which was adopted earlier in 19-05, does not change. It remains in effect. There is no increase or decrease in any fee as per this ordinance. So the member agency shall have primary authority to enforce the requirements of the ordinance. but still Sam has the right to enforce if member agencies fail to initiate enforcement. The ordinance to be approved, to be approved at upcoming special meetings. And that finishes my PowerPoint, and we can.
Did we lose Chair Dye? She just commented.
I see her. She's just blacked out and muted. She's
All right,
here.
She's back. Okay, good.
Okay. So forum is open for questions, if any.
It looks like Chair Dye had a question in the chat board, and then Greg was first in line, but I don't know if you want, Chair Dye, I don't feel you're going to go to your board members first, or?
No, it's fine. We'll do the public comment later. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Greg, do you want to speak? And then Catherine?
Yeah, I wonder if I got to the meeting late. I thought I heard the roll call. I didn't hear public comment. So if we could do that later. We did have it. All right.
You got here late.
Next meeting.
We're so speedy, Greg. Sorry.
What?
We're speedy, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah. On page 73 of the packet, page 4 of the ordinance, or excuse me, not the ordinance, the non-domestic wastewater control program document, there are various categories of chemical pollutants. And the words fixed and volatile occur under dissolved and suspended categories. I believe that the dissolved and suspended is a subtotal. I think this is also true of the organic and free ammonia under nitrogen and phosphorus. And I think the thing would be clearer if you indented, if I understand this right, fixed and volatile and organic and free ammonia, to make it clear that those are constituents of the broader category. You know, if I misunderstood something and those are all separate, let me know, but it looks a little strange to see fixed and volatile repeating without clearly belonging to a higher category. That's page 4. On page 85 of the
Excuse me, Greg.
Packet.
Did someone want to respond to that, or should we wait till he's finished his comment? It seemed like a very specific question. Were you hoping for an answer?
I'm just making the comment. It's yours to do with as you see fit.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm asking if they wanted to answer your specific first comment.
Well, you know, I'm sorry I didn't send it in advance. I'm sure they'll catch up to this. I view it in this category as a typo.
Go ahead.
What? Okay, on page 16 of the document, permits are required to be sent to and on file with the SAM manager, even if the authority is delegated, but there's no deadline for reporting and forwarding. I found that unusual in a business context to not have some requirement for timeliness. And then it's ambiguous to me as a reader why the discharger reporting isn't required to be sent to both the authority and the member agency. Whether or not the authority for this program is delegated to the member agency or not, I think both parties would want to see the discharger reporting at all times. So I was confused that maybe I didn't read everything, you know, in an integrated way, but it just didn't seem the discharger reporting was required to be sent to both the member agency and the authority. That's it for me. Thank you. If you want, I can send an email with these thoughts.
Yeah, that will help, Greg.
Yeah, those are good comments.
Thank you, Greg. Catherine.
Yeah, I have a couple comments, and then I'll come back to my other comments after others have spoken. But Keishan, have you had any contact with the Regional Water Quality Control Board? Have they contacted you, or have you contacted them?
Yes, they have contacted me, and they had asked 3 specific questions. One was the timeline for the reconditioning of the aeration basin 4, which was recommended by Brown and Caldwell. And the second question, I think, was related to something to do with pandemic procedures, how the staff or how SAM is operating under these conditions. And the third question was they wanted a timeline for monitoring and source control efforts of the NDWSCP program. And in particularly, they wanted to know when the breweries and wineries will get enrolled. And they also wanted to know when their effluent characterization will be completed. That was specific to the breweries and wineries. This is what they had reached out to me. I discussed it with the member agency managers, and I had answers for 1 and 2 with the timeline for reconditioning of aeration basin 4. I gave them certain timelines, and the gist of it is, I think in the month of May of next year, it would be ready to get fired. And the pandemic procedures, we already had it in place, so I've given them details of the procedures. And the timelines, I discussed it with the member agency managers and gave the regional board a proper response, which indicated that Montera and Half Moon Bay GCSD are doing it separately. Their timelines are different. MWST has indicated that they'll be able to complete the establishments that they've got by the end of January. And they've already, the fog is in place, and they said they will take care of any enforcements or whatever required to be done. They'll interact with SAM and then take care of it. While Half Moon Bay and GCSD indicated that they will complete the breweries, wineries by mid-February. And they indicated that the entire NDWSCP program will be completed by the permitting and all that associated with it for the establishments will be completed by the end of first quarter. That was what was indicated by the member agencies, and that was communicated to the regional board in writing.
Was that communicated as a single letter under the letterhead of SAM, or were there separate responses submitted?
It was a single letter. It was an email from the regional board, so I responded via email.
Okay. Thank you. I am concerned about having a special meeting to approve this. The breweries and those under wineries and others have stated with a great certainty that SAM is not transparent and that we are trying to hide things from folks. And I have to admit, when I was more active at the county level, when stuff would come up just before Christmas for approval with the staff report several days before, I always felt like it was not an act of transparency and not an act that encouraged public participation. And so I would suggest that, given the dates that have been discussed with this and sent to the Water Quality Control Board, that we postpone this until the first meeting in January, which I believe is January 10. And in the meantime, given the intent of this, the member agencies can all be working on getting this up and implemented. Certainly their actions do not depend on the amendment to this ordinance. So I would like to see this meeting not have a special meeting on December 20th, but have it discussed on January 10, 2022.
Kitchen, do you want to respond, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, this is a good point. Certainly no effort to any way prevent people from participating. Special meetings, you can certainly, where people get bent out of shape about special meetings is 24 hours notice, right? And so sometimes people don't like, they feel like there's not enough notice. So you can always do it with more. You can always do it with 48 hours, 72 hours. But the reason for the 1 week gap, we wanted to make sure, in the interest of transparency, in the interest of getting input from all the member agencies and their legal counsel to the extent they wanted to provide it. We wanted to come to the board tonight, let the board provide input, then also that created an opportunity for others, with the member agencies to provide input as well. And then the thought with just a week and a special meeting afterwards was that would show expedience and show, that we were moving forward with dispatch to the regional board. But I think we're doing that anyway. So it really is up to the board. We don't have to have a special meeting. I mean, heck, I'd appreciate more time to incorporate the comments, make sure we have it right. But it was really an effort to make sure that we were being responsive to the regional board's concerns. That was the reason for the kind of shorter timeline.
Well, it seems to me this has been going on for over a year, so trying to rush things through in 1 week perhaps shows a level of undue defensive haste rather than a thoughtful progress.
Well, that was certainly not our intent. But
I understand intent, but I'm talking about the optics of 4 days before Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Lohman, have your hand up.
Yes, quick comments on that and then others later. First of all, we have family and everybody has family coming in right about that time, so no one's going to be listening to our meeting. I agree with Catherine on that. Other agencies have stalled for months and months on this, and this seems silly to now, after just delay after delay, to try to cram it through right before Christmas when no one's going to be at the meeting. And so I would oppose a special meeting right now, right before Christmas. That just seems stupid. So more comments later.
Okay, do we
I don't know if you want to vote on these items separately or
we don't
it doesn't
need
seem to be a package,
It's not. It's really just the only thing. This was intended as informational. So, the only thing that we needed, a vote on potentially was just the, whether to set an additional meeting. But if the board is of the view that we should just wait to January 10th, which I certainly understand the reasons for that, then we can do that. But the item itself is information.
Because my comment is we've approved a plan. Not a process. We have an outline now, but we've said we're going forward with the domestic waste program. So to the agencies up in Sacramento and everywhere else, we've launched a program. So why we're trying to rush through this piece does not seem necessary at this point. Let's take the time. It's my understanding that in this document that's come through, certainly all of Half Moon Bay's interests are there. Our legal comments and stuff have not been incorporated. I don't know if Granada's comments are incorporated, but this seems to be pushing through a specific agenda here, and I think we just need to wait and discuss these individual items appropriately. And I have more comments on the details afterwards.
Director Clark?
First, I'd like to say I agree with everything that Director Slater-Carter and Director Lohman just said. I don't think it's necessary to have this meeting on the 20th, and it's best to wait until January 10th. And I have a comment, which is, I spent years working with various state agencies. And if you think that they're going to move on this between the 20th of December and the end of the year, forget it. You can't get them to do anything. And that's been my experience for years, and with agencies from small to the state and the feds. So I don't think there's any hurry on this.
All right, does anyone, let's address the question of the next meeting. Does anyone object to postponing this discussion until the first meeting in January? Looks like Deborah Penrose is fine with it. So I think that's the consensus of the board. And should we move on from that question?
Thank you.
Are there other issues that people would like to discuss tonight? Rick.
the ordinance process, which as I understand, does not require unanimous voting, whereas an amendment to the JPA does require unanimous consent. The JPA in this instance is very, very, very clear. I think it's 6 or 7 words. It says basically, I'm not sure if it's agency or SAM, but it says SAM will issue the permits. The ordinance is changing that. The intent is about the same, although agent is different than SAM. This is writing an ordinance which is not in direct agreement with the JPA, which is my understanding, the overriding document. So if we are going to walk down this path of changing the ordinance, there are a lot of good things in the ordinance. There is a lot of potential for agreement, but this has been characterized at the last meeting and this meeting of this is the way we're going to do it, whether we like it or not. And I think we need some serious discussion on some of these items. I think there is grounds for dealing with, some phrasings on this sort of thing. But, doing something that's in conflict with the JPA in the middle of a lawsuit seems a little strange, and it seems like we're trying to get around the JPA in some ways. So I would like this discussion to incorporate all members' agent comments, and let's be serious about doing that. My other comment is we list in here do this and follow best management practices, the BMPs. Nowhere in these documents do we have any listing or discussion of what best management processes are for any of these. So if we're going to say people only need to follow best management processes, we need to define what that is, because Montera could say, well, this is our best management process. And everybody else could say, well, that's not my best management process. That just seems to be, it's not a whole, but anybody can do anything they want to, and they can probably find some document somewhere from somebody that says, well, this is our best management process. But, will each agency have their own best management processes? Or are we going to do it? This is comments which I hope will be discussed at the next meetings. We've had a lot of managers meetings where things are decided, and then at the SAM board meetings, things change and different opinions are being brought forward. The last meeting, as I said, none of Montera's comments are included in this ordinance draft. So I would like to see during these discussions that we define some of these terms. I think we can come to an agreement. There's this whole idea of agent of SAM means exactly the same as SAM. That needs to be worked a little bit, I believe. People have to understand that if you're an agent of SAM doing something and major fines come down because of a problem, that's the same as SAM acting, and people can't escape by saying, oh, well, we don't have any problems. So all that needs to be worked out in these discussions. I think it's just a matter of bringing it up and finding better ways of saying some of these things, and we can get to an agreement and move this thing forward. So I think that covers my comments.
Thank you. I have some number of issues with things, sort of the kind of things Rick's talking about, but language that doesn't make sense to me. The one that is the most concern to me is section 5.5, damages to sewage facilities, which says that in the event damages are caused by the sanitary sewer system or to the sanitary sewer system or any portion thereof by reason of a waste or wastewater discharge from any premises in violation of the provisions of this ordinance or of any permit issued pursuant to this ordinance or of any other requirement of law, the discharger responsible for the occurrence or condition giving rise to such damages and the property owner shall be liable jointly and severally to the member agency and authority for the full amount thereof. I agree with the point that if it is demonstrated or proved that a particular entity or discharger caused a problem, but there's nothing in here about how it gets proved. How does it get, it is, I guess, appealable to the general manager and then the board, but that doesn't seem like very much process when it could result in significant costs that probably a business couldn't pay. Might not be able to even pay. My concern is that it seems like that needs to be expanded a little, and the process of how that would be determined needs to be expanded a bit. So that's just my one comment.
Can I respond to that briefly? Just 5 point. So we took 2019-1, which was the status quo, right? That's what we were operating under. In 2019, the board amended its non-domestic program and replaced it with 219-1. So for example, 5.5, we didn't make any changes to 5.5 other than adding the word member before agency, which was it's the exact. I want to do that. So our approach, Kish and I, when we tried to take what the board approved as guidelines and then try to implement them, making as few changes as possible. And there's still plenty. By making whatever changes were needed to the existing program, but we can go beyond that. So 5.5, but that 5.5 is what exists right now. That's not new.
I understand that.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like, it seems awfully broad and without specifics of how that process would work and what limitations there are. Could you charge one small entity just, I don't know, based on what would you decide that they were the cause of major issues and charge them, say you have to pay $200,000? Doesn't that give you the power to do that? Doesn't that give Sam the power to say, it's your fault, you have to pay $400,000 or $600,000?
Yeah, I can't say why the board, but
is that what it says?
We can revisit anything that the board thinks is appropriate to revisit. We're taking a comprehensive relook, and so now's the time to probably do it.
But is that, am I reading it right, or am I making a mistake? Is that what it says, pretty much?
I have a question, Jeremy. Is due process in the state sanitary code, or is it in other parts of the SAM ordinance? And maybe there should just be a referral to what due process is. I agree with Barbara. I think due process is something that, as a member of the community, SAM has an obligation for each of our businesses. By the same token, if a business is screwing up to either misfeasance or malfeasance, then they do have a responsibility. But giving them the due process to determine that they are the source of the problem is important.
So due process is constitutional. There's due process provisions in both the federal Constitution and in the state Constitution. And it gets the issue of fundamental fairness. You shouldn't be, and some of it's substantive, some of it's procedural. This is probably more on the procedural side, but so yeah, if you're deprived of property without due process of law, it's a constitutional violation. So I haven't looked at this section
well, can you just look at
5.5
that
closely enough to
because-
say whether it's a due process issue or not. But I'm hearing what the critiques are, and I understand where people have some concern.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be solved tonight, but I think that's something that it would be great if you would look at because it does seem overly broad to me. And I have some other minor things, but maybe I'll send an email on some of the concerns about this. And because we're postponing it till January, it seems to me we're going to have time to try to fine tune this and get it so we have something that we all feel comfortable is effective and will do what we want, which is to get a handle on problems that may come to the plant from various businesses in our districts.
Well, we're getting exactly what we wanted tonight, which was input from the directors who have reviewed and have thought about this. So this is great. I will say the one, and this is a more fundamental question that Director Lohman raised, which is, so the member agency managers agreed that they wanted to have a basis for the member agencies to issue permits. And so, and the city's already doing it in the context of the FOG program, which historically has been considered to be part of the non-domestic program. Whether it should be or not, it's a different question, but it has been historically part of the program. So, I made the effort, and there's actually throughout the history of the program, there are situations where there's delegation back and forth between the member agencies and SAM. So SAM has overall control and authority, but there's nothing that says they can't delegate it. And so I feel comfortable with that, but that doesn't mean your legal counsels do. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted your legal counsels to look at it. I'm happy to talk to Montera's counsel and we can have that dialogue, but it doesn't offend me because delegation is something that happens fairly regularly in environmental law, but let's get to something that everybody can live with.
Okay, thanks. John Dowdy.
Sorry, and thanks. Get on camera. I didn't have a lot to say. I wanted to just say thank you first and foremost. I think Jeremy and Keishan and the managers have worked together on this, and I think we're close to getting something that we can live with and kind of all work with and kind of go with that. I think I'll speak for myself, but I don't think I'm speaking out of line. That I think all of us were concerned about the issues of some of the sort of nebulous statements that are contained in the ordinance without clarity about, what it all sort of means and where things go. Back to one of the questions that came around with regard to the procedures and systems and things of that nature. My intention all along was that those were to be developed in conjunction with all parties, that there would not be individual agencies doing their own thing and dealing with it, that we would have a consistent way to approach these issues. This is why we also have suggested and continue to suggest that rather than include in the ordinance the very detailed discussion about protocols for testing, that those be part of a separate document and regulatory guidance and everything. But we all use that. We also, as managers, have at least in context and agreed that we need to look at the SAM ordinance in conjunction with our ordinances, and agreed in principle that we needed to look at those, address those issues, and make sure that we do those in a holistic approach to both our local ordinances and the SAM ordinance. And it's also why we discussed in our group the need to look at coming back probably within 6 months or so of the adoption time to actually look at what in practice this ordinance is resulting in and to evaluate what we need to change and whether the ordinance and whether the implementation and everything that we did is a failure or a success or somewhere in between. So we have discussed that. We've discussed it at length and would suggest that out to the group on that deal. And I'm happy to answer any questions from my perspective on the manager side, but I'll mute myself and move on. But thank you for, and I'll say this, I don't think any of the managers are unhappy that you're pushing out to the 10th of January, we were concerned about the quick turnaround as well. But we also understood the regulatory context that we were working in, and we're concerned about it as well. So we understood why there was the proposal for that quick turnaround.
Thank you. Catherine, your hand is up. Are you?
It's up. I have a couple more comments to what John just said. Thank you. I agree that perhaps not having testing protocols in the ordinance, but as a separate document, I think that's a good idea. And but I've also followed enough law and corporate law that we need to have in the ordinance defined limits. And so I agree with, as in not to exceeds, for instance. And I agree with Rick, best management practices is a very nebulous term. Whose best management practice? When was it written? What's going on? Because you can argue this in court, which we don't want to do. And it's better if all of the agencies have agreed on specific not to exceeds. It gives the businesses a level of confidence that they can on their own get testing done to make sure they are within the requirements. Certainly when we had our own business, we were constantly hiring professionals and technical people to come in and monitor all kinds of different things. And we relied on the codes to know what was going on. If we're going to have best management practices, I would suggest it should read the most current set of best management practices, if there is one, as defined by the regional or the state water quality control board, so that we are fully in keeping with our regulatory agency. So that's one of my suggestions. I would like to see, when we finally get to approving this, an outlaw of the changes drafted by Jeremy with a discussion about the legislative intent of these, so that the legislative intent is part of the record. Trying to argue legislative intent after it's been approved and then somebody disagrees with it is a long and tiresome problem. And I think our public has a right to know what we were intending. And so I would like to see that. So that we all have a clear understanding. I had thought when we were, and I didn't vote for them, but that when the guidelines were being adopted, it was my understanding that there was going to be further ongoing discussion, not just a final, this is it. So I would like to see that legislative intent and a track record or a tracking of the changes. I do appreciate that the red line document was in the staff report, but trying to go back through and go this one and that one and how does this work? I'm not an attorney, so some of these fine points escape me, and I'd like to know what it is they mean. And then let me see, I had one more comment, but where did I put that?
Well, can I, maybe while you're finding it, can I just address the best management practices? When I was environmental project manager for a big development project in Southern California, I did condition compliance, so I wasn't involved with, but every one of our contractors had like the standard best management practices for their industry. And they weren't just some random thing pulled out of the air. There was something that we could agree to. And I know in fact, in the question of the breweries, they are working with the Small Brewery Association and actually already volunteered to help work with Sam to develop the best management practices. So I understand your concern about what they are, but I don't think they're just something mysterious that you can, there's this one and that one. There are accepted ones that people can, just find and potentially modify and use. And that would actually, I think, give Sam and the agencies more ability to control what goes on in the businesses than just sort of a vague, some of the other ways that we would have to do it, which is testing and so forth. That I think expecting them to do certain things as spelled out in writing, as agreed to both by the businesses and by Sam and the agencies, could be a very powerful way to make sure that things are being done properly.
Well, I agree with you. I just think that in this ordinance, it just says best management practices. So I'd like to see some definitions.
Good idea.
And I would like to see not to exceed limits on what's in line with the plant operations. And then to your point earlier, Barbara, there's some real vague and gray and nebulous parts. One of the questions I came up with was, how are toxic pollutants detected? It says you're not supposed to use toxic pollutants, but how are they detected? And who's going to be detecting them? Another one is, who has a final say in a permit disagreement between a member agency as an agent and SAM? And how is that resolved? And if it's nebulous the way it is written right now, then it, at least in the JPA, it went to mediation. But this has no ways of solving this, so maybe it should reference the JPA for solving different points of view.
Good questions, seems to me. Very good points, Catherine.
And I think that something Greg has brought up over the years, and Greg and I are both in agreement on this, is somebody has to pay for the costs of an agency or a business or a family or whatever. And so if you don't ask the person who is creating the problem to pay for that cost, then you're asking other agencies or other users to pay for it. Right. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. Companies have insurance. They don't like to use it, but they get sued and they get requests all the time. And so I'm not against having a company or a sewer user because some of these might be individual processes that are not even done by a company, and they'd have to use their own insurance. But I don't think it's fair to ask others who haven't been polluting the system to pay for the costs of pollution.
No, the only issue is, how do you prove that they are the source?
Well, and that's a good point. And I think that's something that maybe should be put in processes. We, in our finance report, our treatment costs have been $127,000 over budget. That means everybody on the coast is going to pay for that until we get this thing
year.
solved.
Don't forget, that's just this year. That's not counting last year.
That's right. Yeah. And so we need it. It's very important to me that we get a fair, transparent, easily understandable code that has solutions in it and that has consequences perhaps in it too. And if there's going to be additional documents, I'd like to see those too. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
All right, so I didn't know best management practices was gonna be such a popular topic, but that's okay. Just for the record, in the ordinance itself, in section 2.11, we talk about, but there is a definition. So in
no, there isn't.
Yeah, there is. It's in, on page 73 of the overall packet.
I looked at it.
Best management practice schedules, activities, prohibitions of practices, maintenance procedures, and other management practice to implement the prohibitions listed in Article 2. BMPs include treatment requirements, operating procedures, and practices control site runoff, spillage or leaks, sludge. So anyway, it probably could be more specific, but there is a definition. My point is, and about BMPs, so there's two ways they can be used. One, they can be included as part of a permit along with numeric standards. So you can kind of have both, and that's not uncommon. Or you can have BMPs in lieu of having to get a permit at all. And it sounds like there may be some skepticism as to doing that.
Yeah,
one of the agencies in Southern California, SACWA, they do that. But they have a large number of non-domestic permittees. And so for the ones that are more minor, they'll use essentially what's a waiver. They'll require BMPs and they won't require the permit. And so we don't have to do that.
Doesn't the permit give them the authority to make sure that the BMPs are being observed and
agreed. I mean, essentially what it winds up being is like almost like a waiver. So if you do BMPs, so it's like a permit light, right? So, but that's easy enough to get rid of. If we want to have BMPs strictly within permits, and I can certainly understand the desire to do that, and that's what we can do.
Okay. Any further discussion? Thank you, Jeremy.
Sure.
I think we've given you a lot to think about. Oh, Rick.
I'm trying not to act, paranoid here, but I've become paranoid. I remember the good old days 5 or 6 years ago when we actually acted like a cooperative JPA. But words are important. The lawsuit, which is against Granada, Montera, and even part of Half Moon Bay in Miramar and Frenchman's Creek, is about words. Couple words, a couple sentences. So this is critical. This is important work we have to do. And I hope we take that seriously and get something that everybody can agree to, because words are important. Thank you. That's my final comment. Move on.
All right. Anyone else want to speak to this? All right, there's no action required on this item, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for everyone being so engaged with this topic. Hopefully we'll figure this out and we'll have something we can all work with and be proud of. Moving on to General Manager's report. How is the plant doing with all this rain?
Yes, the rains have not stopped. It's just partly that we've finished addressing the storm, but whatever we've done, a large part of it is today. We'll definitely give a report, but the bottom line is the plant, there are no violations of the plant as of now. And the agencies, whatever SAM is maintaining, we've had 2 SSOs, one in Half Moon Bay area and one in Montera area. But I'll let Tim talk about it, and we have some pictures which we can share. And we can start with Montera. Tim, are you ready? If I start showing pictures, you can talk about the SSOs.
Yeah, I'm just getting an update from Gabe. He's still at the plant right now, and I'm trying to get a hold of Carlos. Like I said, when I was on my way home, I got home around 6:30. Carlos was going out to Montera still, out to Valleymar. So.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get an update on what's going on.
Let's start with the pictures that we've got.
Yes.
This is go ahead.
So that picture there, for the folks, that's the 1300 block of Cedar Street in Montera. Unfortunately, we thought that the lift station, the Datehart lift station, was actually the low spot. Is what we thought. And it turns out, after talking to some of the neighbors who live at the end of Cedar Street, that perhaps what we thought was the low spot was not actually the low spot. It was just the fact that no one ever called. They were just so used to it, they went, oh, it's doing that again. So that's kind of a sucky thing that we just found out today, that after we thought we were on top of things, pumping and dumping. I mean, the guys were out there all day with the Vector truck, vectoring from the lift station and dumping over on George Street where it would gravity flow down to Canoff. But yeah, so that was a sucky thing. So we can go to the next slide. This actually goes to the creek, which goes behind Date Heart, and it comes out, it makes it to the ocean. This was a yard about 3 houses away. You can see, I don't know if you can see the Christie box there. It's a sewer clean out. They had a sewer popper, which worked, which was a good thing, right? The sewer popper actually worked, and it came out in the front yard, which is way better than it going in the house. Unfortunately, this was also part of the spillage. Like I said, what's that?
At Cedar Street, right? As a part of the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's all on the same line. It's all on the same line. It all goes into the same creek, which goes out to the same discharge area. It looks like, as near as I can tell, it looks like it discharges at 16th Street, where it goes to the creek, where it gets out to the ocean at 16th Street.
So we had a spill? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, this is one of them. It's a category 1, category 1 spill, which made it out to the Pacific Ocean. That is correct.
Okay, in looking at this on Google Earth,
Yep.
it's on the uphill side of Cedar Street from Hart.
Yep.
And that's where the house on the corner of Cedar and Hart has put in sandbags and things to keep runoff from it running into their yard.
Cedar and Hart, I don't know. I don't know. Do they?
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I don't know what they do out there.
No, I appreciate that. And it looks like there's quite a few houses that come down into that area.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting to see what can be done to remedy this.
Yeah, I've been on the phone with Clemens today. I've been on the phone with Pippin. They said luckily the rain subsided a little bit, obviously not before it was an issue. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, where it entered the Pacific, it was at 16th Street, so it's in an area that is really not accessible. So, if there's any upside, there is that, I guess. Where it hit the ocean, it's not accessible, but it would still be considered a category 1. I haven't figured out the volumes yet. That's going to be a start time. I don't have a solid start time. I don't have a solid stop time because I was running all over the place back and forth. So that's going to be interesting at best.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What else do we got? What else do we got in our bag of goodies today? Oh, this was down at the end of Streeter. So this is, like I said, this is the 1300 block of Cedar at the very end.
I like the Santa Claus in the photo.
Yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't stop it. We were like, Santa, can you just stop the rain? But no, it didn't happen. No.
Somebody was naughty.
Yeah. This one.
Yeah, Half Moon Bay.
So this is Half Moon Bay. This is Francis State Beach. This is by the bathrooms at Francis State Beach, the back bathrooms where their little, I don't know, auditorium sort of play area that they have back there. That's where that's from. What else have we there? This was, oddly enough, this was a clean out that they were looking for at Francis State Beach also, which we found. And I said, well, make sure you put a stake there and then you guys can, you can, bring it up to grade and put a Christie box around it. So at least you know where it is now.
Yeah.
The other one, the one that's coming up is not pretty at all. If it's the one I think it is.
Yes, Director Lohman, you had a question?
Just one quick comment.
Yeah.
I know it on the legislative side, California has been looking very closely at more unfunded mandates, I would presume, which would be to combine storm runoff and sanitary sewers. So that is something we're going to have to watch. I have no idea how you would do that because our coast-side pipe system can't handle this kind of runoff. If it's all combined somehow and sent to the plant for processing. But they're serious about that, and we should watch that because it could massively affect all of our systems here.
Well, I have to say that's what San Francisco did 100 and some years ago, and it's been a failure ever since.
Okay, then let me take you to the plant. We had the effluent building. Inside the effluent pumps were not able to keep up. So this is all getting flooded from the effluent pumps there.
Yeah. We actually had to, well, this was part of the reason we had to have the trash pump in the influent to keep everything going back through the system.
Yeah, but the effluent overflowed outside. This is the effluent building. And you see all this overflow coming here, coming into this manhole here. And from here, it goes to the headworks. And that's why we had a lot of flow coming into the headworks. The influent flow was very high. Sorry. And then we had the contact basins, which are pretty close to an overflow. Fortunately, the rain stopped. Otherwise, it would have been miserable getting these things to overflow, and you see this.
Gross.
Yep. Yep. And this gives you an idea about the Pillarcitos Creek by the plant. You see the creek there?
Jesus.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. This was at 11 in the morning. Fortunately for us, the rain stopped.
This is by where the gate goes from inside the plant to the creek.
Correct. Yep. Look at the way it's got flooded, and fortunately it started coming inside, but this was inside the plant. We saw the water coming here, but well, that was it. That was pretty close. Those are all the pictures that I've got. I don't have anything else.
Hey, Kishan, the one by the effluent building,
yeah,
where it flooded, that affected the flare, correct?
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to show that. The flare got flooded. This is the flare. The flare stopped functioning, and this got flooded. And another place where we had a problem, I haven't got the picture, is in the digester building. We have the PLC input-output I/O for the PLC. There was actually water leaking from the roof, and the cards got shorted out. So we lost total contact with the digesters at that point of time. So we had to call in Calcon on emergency, and luckily for us, we had some cards, the PLC cards, as spares. So we were able to replace it. But there was just some drops of water coming from the roof. We did go up the roof. We didn't find any puddle of water, but I don't know how, probably seeped through and then started dripping over a period of time. That shorted it. Fortunately, it did not catch fire, unlike the bus duct, which happened a couple of years back. We were lucky. We smelled something, it got shorted out, and then we quickly rushed there and found out the problem.
There were a couple of videos that you didn't show us. Can you show us?
Oh, we have a video, but it's not very clear. That's why I didn't show it. Shoot. Sorry. Yeah, it doesn't play very well on my laptops.
Well, I want to thank the crew and management.
Look at this. That's coming out from the manhole.
In the field next to the plant?
No, that's at Francis Beach, right, Tim?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, the short answer is yes. That's on Balboa Avenue.
Yep.
Can we send all these pictures and videos to any remaining climate change deniers? including the 200-mile tornado.
Catherine was starting to say it, and I'll let her finish.
I-
but
I just-
I agree. Thank you so much for all the hard work that the staff did on this.
Yeah, I just think you guys, I've said it before, you guys have been awesome and you continue to be awesome. And I'm sure everyone on the coast is deeply thankful for what we don't see because of what a good job you guys do.
Agreed.
I'm surprised by the comments we get from even just the general public. They're just that they're amazed at some of the stuff that we see and that we do. And they don't even realize what it is until we tell them what it is. Then they're like, oh my goodness, just like that one in Montero earlier today where the guy was like, oh, it always does that when it rains. And we went, oh crap, we don't want to hear that.
Oops.
Yeah.
But now we know, now we have a baseline and we know what to look for.
I'd
I'm
like
sure
to
you'll
see
come
this
back to us
go-
with a report on things that need to be changed and improved to avoid these specific problems in the future. So, oh my gosh.
One of the things I think is convincing people not to put rags and non-dissolvables in the toilet. And I think that this might be a good time to start that just at all our regular meetings, just start telling people.
Unfortunately, everything that we experienced today and what's still going on, like I said, there's guys that are in the field right now dealing, and we have guys scheduled to work through the night. It's the rain, it's the inundation, it's the groundwater, everything that's just coming into the system. I mean, you would think we're a combined system and we're not. And that's the worst part.
Yeah, the flows went up to almost 15 at the plant. And it was at 15 for quite some time. Because you can imagine, on a daily basis, we hardly touch 1.5 to 2 MGD. Just the magnitude of the flows, just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
And we're lucky it stopped.
Yeah, lucky it stopped. We were pretty close at Portola. I think we touched almost 16 to 17.
Yeah, we got to 17 at Portola. I had to shut down the Montero pump station I think I had it shut down for 2 hours. I was calculating the rise rate in the Walker tank, so at least I had a general idea of how much time I had. But yeah, it's freaky when you have to shut down an entire station just so one of your other ones either can hopefully catch up while you're hoping that the rain stops.
Yeah, so the second storm after October today is what the wet weather storage expansion, the extra 200,000 that we put in, helped us.
Yep.
And would it be even more useful to have another 200,000, up to the 600 that was recommended in the report from 20 years ago?
Oh yeah, it would make our life easy. I mean, we were panicking. I mean, we were not sure whether the rain would stop or not. I mean, fortunately for us, it stopped at 11. There were breaks in between the heavy rain, so that helped us. I just imagine if it had continuously rained all the way up to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we would have had spill there. No doubt about it.
So there would have been a spill from Portola Pump Station onto Surfers Beach.
Yeah.
Not Portola. We would have, so no one really wants to know what my plan is, right? Because it's better that people don't know until it actually happens. So I'm not going to tell you.
I will come in and get a tour so I can watch your plan.
George is cringing up there. So
yeah.
we should move on.
Sorry, George.
Moving on. All right. Anything further on general manager's report? Moving on to attorney's report.
Nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Director's reports. Topics for future board consideration. All right, then let's adjourn to closed session. Do we have a closed session tonight?
I have nothing in closed session. Jeremy, do you have something?
If you don't have anything to add, no, we can probably skip it tonight.
Yes.
Do that.
Yep, we can skip the closed
Adjourn
session.
tonight's meeting. Thank you all very much.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy
Holidays, Director.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
And Debbie, since we won't see you before your last day, cheers and congratulations. And what bar are we going to meet at to celebrate?
Let's.
There's lots of bars here.